Hello, everyone, and welcome inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Ooh, Broncos country. We got some stuff to talk about today. Broncos got the win, but it was anything but pretty. Wow, we got a lot to get to. Brandon Marshall, my co-host, joining us today from Vegas as we do this show remotely. B. Marsh, going to be good to have you in studio next week after the 49ers come to town. But before we get there, let's talk about what we saw yesterday out at Mile High. We start, as always, with What's on B. Marsh's Mind. What's on B. Marsh's Mind brought to you by Breckenridge Distillery, the official bourbon of the Denver Broncos. Shop Colorado retailers for their limited edition Broncos Bourbon Blends. Mr. Marshall, I cede the floor to you.
Well, all I know is I don't know how these guys are being coached, how disciplined or how, stern the coaches are when it comes to, penalties. But look, double-digit penalties in the first two games. I mean, we're lucky we're not 0-2, first of all, because, that's how you lose games. Like I said before, it's tough enough to beat the other team, but when you beat yourself, I mean, come on, it's almost impossible in the NFL. So, I think it was 13 penalties this week or 12 penalties this week, 13 last week. That has to get cleaned up, and that's on the coaching staff. And that's on the guys enforcing, whether it's offsides, whether it's holding, whether it's false starts, whatever the case may be, that's on the coaching staff, and that needs to get cleaned up.
I'm with you 100%. And you said, I'm wondering what these guys are coaching. I'm wondering if they're being coached, right? Like at this point, I mean, come on. What are we doing here? And these are stupid penalties, right? You had to delay a game that knocked you out of field goal range, and so instead of getting points, potentially, I know it would have been a long field goal kick for Brandon McManus, all of a sudden you got to run the punt team out there. Then your punt returner's not even on the field. Like, what is going on? These are inexcusable penalties. Brandon, this is JV stuff, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, yes, this is JV. And this is not what you would expect from a pro football team. And Brandon, they told me it was going to be different. They told me with a new head coach and with a new quarterback, it was going to be different era of Broncos football. To me, it looks a heck of a lot like what we've seen over the last couple of years.
I'm gonna be honest, man. We could have kept Vic Fangio for this. We could have had Vic Fangio and just gave him the quarterback that he needed. We could have gave him Russell Wilson, and then he would have been fine, right? So I mean, look, I know it's early, it's early takes, but at the same time, all we can go off of is the film and what we see, right? That's all we can go off of. So we can't say, well, they'll be okay and watch, they'll do this. And, I remember I was in Denver last week, and I was watching the game, and I left out the establishment while I watched the game, and some fans, they recognized me, and they were disappointed at the loss. They said, watch, we're going to go 10-0 after this. And I'm like, okay, well, I hope so, right? You know what I'm saying? I hope so, but off of what I've seen, I'm like, well, look, it doesn't look like, especially once we play the tougher teams, the elite teams.
Yes.
And let's be real, Seattle and Houston, they're not elite, okay? When we face the elite teams, it's going to be tough, man. So I don't know what's going on in practice, but it has to be cleaned up.
If they had played like 28 other teams in the NFL yesterday, that's a loss.
They took an L, 100%.
100%. And to me, you're right. This is all on Nathaniel Hackett. I think he's trying to do too much. I think he's trying to be too cute. I think that he's talking about how there's kind of some voices, in the headset that maybe shouldn't be there. I think they've got to streamline things. I wonder if he should give up the offensive play calling duties at this point. And I know it's early. I know we're only 2 games into this thing. But what I've seen from Nathaniel Hackett is a guy who looks like he is way in over his head at this point. And it is disrupting everything that they are doing.
Way in over his head, okay? I mean, the team came in with crazy expectations, and I still think, they have a chance to be really good or good. I'll say good. But the way the coaching staff looks and how they're being coached and the continuous delay of games and, the operations just isn't crisp, all the penalties. And, we're looking real fourth places right now. I'm be honest with you. We look real fourth places in the AFC West.
And that's after what we saw from the Raiders yesterday in that game against the Cardinals, which we'll get into a little bit later. So, Brandon, let me ask you this. As a former player, you're inside that locker room, right? Take me back to your playing days. Do you realize that your head coach is overwhelmed and is kind of treading water here a little bit? And how does that play with guys inside that locker room? Because if we're seeing it, I have to imagine that they're seeing it as well.
Yeah, it definitely, look, in the locker room, we're definitely going to speak about it. We're going to talk about it. One thing we will do, we will talk about it. But we're also going to say, okay, y'all control what we can control. You know, let's just try to fight for our lives, for our jobs, one, but also for our season. And so, you know, we can't control, you know, how the head coach handles his business. But I will say it'll make you lose a little confidence in him. Just like we lost a little confidence in Vance Joseph. And that just is what it is. You know, when I was there, we never lost confidence in John Fox. We never lost confidence in Kubiak. But when Vance came, that's when we started to, you know, we had confidence at first, but then, like, okay, we don't really have confidence in our head coach. But at one point, you know, we're professionals, right? So like I said, we play for our jobs, our livelihoods, our families, you know, so we're going to give it 100%. But you kind of side-eye like, okay, I don't know what kind of coach we got, but, you know, it's not looking the best right now.
And I think over the next couple of games, he's kind of teetering on that edge, right? Because it's only been 2 games. But what happens if this problem continues? What happens if these issues continues and they become a situation where he can't figure things out, right? And then you end up losing games because of your head coach. And I think you can make the argument that they lost in Seattle because of their head coach. They were closer than they should have been yesterday because of their head coach. What happens if they drop games because of their head coach? Then that loss of confidence, I think, really, really starts to hurt you. The other thing that I see, Brandon, is I think he's trying to be too cute, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You know, you're looking at like, okay, I go back to the Noah Fant run to start that game a couple years ago, to start the season. Rich Gangarello's very first play call, the Noah Fant end around against the Raiders in Oakland. And I had flashbacks to that yesterday when they're running Andrew Beck on an option play with a potential pitch to Javonte Williams. Like, stop it. Just run the freaking ball like a regular offense. You know what I mean? You get inside the 5 to 10 yard line and you're lining up in shotgun and you're trying to throw the ball. Run the ball. You got Javonte Williams averaging 5 yards a carry. You got Melvin Gordon averaging 4.7 yards a carry. Stop trying to be so cute. I look at this as a guy who comes in and he's supposed to be the offensive genius, right? He was hired because he's got a great offensive mind, allegedly, and now he's trying to like prove it to people rather than just be consistent and do the smart thing.
First of all, I love how you said allegedly because it's looking real allegedly right now. Okay, it's looking real allegedly. You know, I mean, to be honest with you, like you said, it's try to be cute. You know, he comes in, obviously has this star quarterback, right? So he's gonna throw it a little more than he runs it, and that's just the name of the game when you give your guy $245 million. But at the same time, at some point, you got to go with what works. Okay, you know, there's times if you look at it, if you watch Tom Brady over the years, there's times where he throws the ball 40 times a game, but there's times where they hand the ball off because it's working. You know what I'm saying? Because it's about winning. It's about winning, right? So I don't know what's going on. They got to find the recipe because we don't have any identity. I don't think we have an offensive identity or necessarily a defensive identity. When we have to find our identity and find it fast.
To me, the way you look smart is by winning games, right? To your point. It doesn't matter how you do it. At the end of the day, if you win games, everybody's going to be happy and you're going to look like the offensive genius. But putting up 16 points against the Texans and the Seahawks doesn't lead me to believe that you're an offensive genius. Heck, Joe Flacco and the Jets put up 17 points in the fourth quarter and you're managing 16 points in your first 2 games combined. They got to do some things.
Hey, I started Joe Flacco in my other fantasy league, and he got me 30-plus points. I look like a genius right now, okay? Flacco Jody. I look like a genius. Now, all I know is this, you know, this Broncos offense, it's not what we thought, okay? It's at least right, especially right now, it's not what we thought. You know, granted, we lost Tim Patrick, but at the same time, we have, you know, 3 really good receivers. You know, I'm going to hold out. The jury's out on KJ because, you know, he's been injury prone a little bit, but you know, look, and Judy he's looking real like he's made of glass. Okay, Judy may be made of glass. I'm glad Cortland Sutton did his thing yesterday, but we got to figure something out, man. We got to figure it out. We have a bell cow running back in Javonte and Melvin, man. We got to just feed those guys. We got to feed them.
Well, and to your point, right, yes, you have Cortland Sutton, but when Jerry Jeudy goes down yesterday, you're already without KJ Hamler, who was inactive. All the more reason to run the football. You know what I mean? Because good things happen when you're giving it to those guys. When we come back, you could have used Joe Flacco in your fantasy game between the 2 of us last week. We will talk a little bit about that. Plus, we'll take a glass half full approach from yesterday, and I'll tell you which side of the ball took a little offense to what my co-host had to say in last week's episode. They heard what he said, and they responded in a big way. We'll talk more about that and more next, right here on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Back inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. And B. Marsh, last week, what was on your mind was you called out the Broncos defense and you wondered, is this still the championship caliber defense that we have come to know from the Denver Broncos? And you basically said, no, it wasn't. And then they go into a game without Justin Simmons. Pat Surtain gets hurt. Look, I realize it was the Houston Texans, but I thought the Broncos defense was really good yesterday, and I don't think they win that game if it weren't for the defense holding the Texans out of the end zone. They've now played 6 quarters without allowing a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, look, they played really well. I think they held the Texans maybe 2 for 13 on third down. I mean, that's stellar. That's how you win football games, getting off the field on third down as a defense, right? So, I mean, look, I called them out last week, and to be honest, they're playing well. They held Seattle to 17 points, and they held Houston to 9 points. But my thing was, I'm like, just the way they made Geno Smith look last week.
Yes,
hold on.
they absolutely deserve to be called out.
Yeah, like, come on now. Like, let's get real. Now, Geno's a pro. He's been in the league for a long time, but it's still Geno, and I'm not buying it. Okay, so they stepped up yesterday. They stepped up and they held the Texans to 9 points, man, and that's how you win the football game. That's how you play championship defense, especially when your offense isn't as explosive as you would have hoped.
Well, you say you're not buying Geno. Neither were the 49ers yesterday, right? Like, that was the game. The 49ers go in there and they pound the Seahawks. That was the game we expected from the Broncos last month, right? Didn't get it, 100%. Obviously. And to your point, I thought the Broncos defense deserved to be called out after that game, especially after the first half. But now I think what you're seeing is they're starting to play a little bit better. They still had some big plays last night that they want back. But I thought they were really good. And the way that they are getting to the quarterback, I think, has been really impressive. Draymond Jones had 2 sacks last night. Randy Gregory getting in there. Bradley Chubb still having an impact. I think that is something that we've been waiting for. And they're forcing turnovers too, And so I think that's something that has been lacking from this defense over the last couple of years. And now it starts to feel like, okay, if they can get this going forward, and again, I know it was just the Texans, but if they can get this going forward, that is going to be good, especially based on what we're seeing from the offense so far.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the last couple of years, the person who got the most turnovers was Justin Simmons, right? He always has at least 4 picks a season, maybe 5, right? He's a turnover machine himself. But to get the rest of the team going, that's exactly what we need. And having a good D line that can pressure the quarterback, man, that's gold. That's what helped us out, in our Super Bowl run, man. We had amazing pass rushers, Malik Jackson, Derek Wolfe, Von D. Ware, Shaq Berry. I mean, it was endless, So the rotation came and the pass rush never dropped off, and that'll help the DBs because it's a passing league, obviously. It's going to help Darby. It's going to help Surtain. It's going to help Kareem. It's going to help Caden Stearns, Justin Simmons. It's going to help all the guys. So, hey, man, shout out to the front, man. They got to keep that up.
Well, and I thought that was really important yesterday because you started the game with no Justin Simmons, and then Surtain gets hurt. And so you got Damari Mathis forced into action there. And I thought he played well, but you're right. Like those guys up front, they got to continue to do their job so that back end can have things a little bit easier. And I think that made a big difference yesterday. That being said, let's jump into our report card. Today's report card brought to you by the Colorado Lottery. Play CBS Sport Pick the Score for your chance to win $1,000 in scratch tickets. To enter, visit cbscolorado.com/contest. Professor Marshall, who are you handing out a grade to today?
Man, I'm giving out a grade to my old friend, my old pal, Brandon McManus. Okay, without B-Mac, because look, we're not scoring points. We scored 16 points 2 weeks in a row. B-Mac had 10 himself yesterday. Shout out to B-Mac, who's been a consistent person in this league, a consistent kicker. He made a 50-yarder yesterday. And, man, without B-Mac, I don't know where we'd be. So shout out to B-Mac. I give B-Mac an A.
And it could have had even more had they not gotten that penalty that we talked about earlier, that delay of game that pushed them from 54 to 59, and then they decided to punt. I love that grade for Brandon McManus, and he's a guy who, you're right. You know, I go back to that day that you guys were at the White House and President Obama makes that joke about the offensive firepower in the heart of that Broncos offense. Kicker Brandon McManus, you know what I mean? And like that's ringing true yet again here, at least to start through the first two games of 2022. And I think back to training camp, and Cortland Sutton was mic'd up one day and he said, "Hey, look, I love B-Mac, but he's only coming on the field for extra points. We're not kicking any field goals this year." Yeah, right? I know that's the goal, but they've needed their kicker so far through this season. I like the A for Brandon McManus there. I'm going to hand out another D today, and it's going back to the head coach, and I'm just going to keep handing these out until he figures things out. And, like, look, I mean, there's just so much that went wrong yesterday from an operational standpoint. They were out of timeouts with 7 minutes to go in the game. Now, it didn't come back to bite them, but you had to, the one timeout on fourth down I'll excuse because you want to get your plays right there, right? But you're taking timeouts in order to avoid delay of game situations because you have operational issues on the punt return. The crowd, Brandon, is chanting down the play clock because they realize that the Broncos offense is so inept and is having such struggles getting the snap. The guys were joking about it in the locker room. That's a slap in the face to me when your crowd has to start chanting down the play clock because they're worried about you getting a delay of game and realize that the 11 guys on the field and the guys calling the plays from the box can't get things done properly in time. So Nathaniel Hackett gets another D from me.
Hey, I'm not mad at that grade. You know, I mean, clearly it's trial and error with him. You know, he's being thrown into the fire. You know, he probably was thinking like, yo, being an offensive coordinator was much easier than this. You know, I got to sit up in the booth and call a play. I don't have to worry about time management, clock management, timeouts, yada, yada, yada. You know, I'll leave that to somebody else. So now it's on you, okay? It's on you. Now you got to be the guy. You're the guy. You got to make sure everything's on point. I don't know if he needs to do some extra, you know, film study himself or situational. Actually, maybe, you know, they need to go to practice, have certain situations, okay, a play clock, and they need to either call timeout, they need to figure these things out, man, because not only do the players need it, but the head coach needs it too.
And I agree. And I appreciate that Nathaniel Hackett is kind of taking some ownership of this. I'm not sure that I'm totally buying what he's selling after the game and that he totally believes that he needs to look inside himself. But that's my challenge to him this week, right? You're the head coach. You got to look inside yourself, okay? You're 2 games into your head coaching career. I'll cut you some slack there, but it has got to get better. And if it doesn't get better, that is going to be a problem for this organization. So we're 2 games in. You handed out 2 D. I've handed out 2 Ds. Now, can he get a C next week, right? Can I just see some incremental improvement? I don't need his A game, but I need something better than what I'm seeing from the head coach right now.
Yeah, no, we need it, man, because, you know, at the end of the day, he's you know, he's holding the team back. To be honest with you, he's hindering the team. And, you know, it's one thing for a player to do it, right? But for the head coach to hinder the team, oh, yeah, nah, can't have that.
That's not good. Can't have it. Can't win with him.
Can't win with it.
All right, when we come back, we got to take one final break. When we come back, we will jump into our fantasy thoughts for tonight's Monday night game, and we will zoom around the league. All that and more next right here on Upon Further Review, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Travel consideration is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Back inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy, and it is time to zoom around the league, brought to you by ZoomCare. Visit ZoomCare.com to learn more about their Beyond Better urgent and primary healthcare clinics in Denver and in Boulder. B. Marsh, you're out in Vegas, so let's start there. What in the world happened to the Vegas Raiders yesterday?
You know what's crazy, man? I actually pulled up to the game just real quick because I had to meet some business folk over there. I said, what's up? You know, it looked like the Raiders handling pretty well. I left to come back home to catch the Broncos game, and I had a meeting with my foundation kids. And I'm like, okay, you know, just looking at the score line, the Raiders got them. And then next thing you know, they get beat. They get, I think the Cardinals scored 16 points in the fourth quarter. I can't believe it because Arizona looked just real basic. They look real average on the field. But in that fourth quarter, they must have turned it on. They shifted the gear, and I don't know what's going on. I'm getting remnants of Josh McDaniels back when he was in Denver. So, maybe he might not be a head coach. Let's just be real. He may just be an offensive coordinator, and he may just need to be under Bill Belichick because clearly, anywhere other than New England, he looks real pedestrian. So it was a crazy game. Devontae Adams only had 2 catches. Kudos to the Cardinals for holding him down, but yikes.
What's funny is Broncos country is just loving this from so many different aspects, right? Not only is it the Raiders, but then it's Josh McDaniels, and they're just absolutely loving this. And I think what's crazy is I don't know that Arizona, obviously you got to credit the players for making plays, right? But I don't know that you want to live with that if you're Arizona and basically Kyler Murray going God mode video game, running all over the field, and that's how you end up winning the game. I don't know that that's a successful formula to win, but it was certainly good enough yesterday for them to not only win, but pull a big-time comeback and beat the Raiders. I'll be interested to see what happens in Vegas kind of the rest of the way, and obviously the Broncos going to be there in 2 weeks, but that was not the start I expected for the Vegas Raiders this season. I liked their over in terms of total wins, and that has not been the team that I expected. I didn't expect Hunter Renfrow to fumble the ball. He's usually the sure-handed guy, so it just feels like that could come off the rails soon there in Vegas.
Oh, yeah, no, it definitely seemed like come off the rails soon. I can kind of see why maybe they try to put a clause in Kyler Murray's contract, because maybe he does his thing. Maybe he just does whatever he wants, and not reading the defense, fully. But hey, it is what it is. He got the win, and he's a Pro Bowl quarterback. So, what can you say about him?
One of the other big comebacks yesterday, the Dolphins and Baltimore. And I picked the Dolphins to win this game, but it was not looking pretty. Devin Duvernay takes the opening kickoff to the house, and I'm like, oh, this game's going to get away from Miami in a hurry. And it did. Lamar Jackson had that big 70-plus yard run, but then all of a sudden, Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa connect, not once but twice. And Brandon, I'm sitting here I know it's easier said than done, but if you're the Baltimore Ravens defense, all you got to do, try to keep Tyreek Hill in front of you. Again, easier said than done, but how do you let that guy get behind you?
Hey, I'm gonna be honest with you. Every team says that. Just keep Tyreek Hill in front of you. Nobody can do it. It's really tough, especially if you try to play man or you got some sort of zone where it's match coverage and you don't have an umbrella over the top, man. Tyreek Hill. First of all, shout out to the coaching staff, for cooking up and down up the plays to get Tyreek Hill in positions to where he can be open. But Tyreek Hill has just a godly, skill set of speed, acceleration, and quickness, man. Most guys might have 1, maybe 2, but he has all 3, which is why he's so tough to cover. Look, Jalen Waddle on the other side. Yeah. I thought, because Lamar Jackson's playing out of his mind right now, right? He said he want to get paid, right?
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson's that money.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, he needs that money, but at the same time, look, Dolphins look pretty good. Tua, he's still underthrows. He's not, a Patrick Mahomes. He still underthrows a little bit, but when Tyreek Hill has that much separation, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, he certainly didn't, even on some of those underthrows. Both of them were really kind of underthrown, but obviously Tyreek, being the great player that he is, still able to make that catch. All right, let's jump into our fantasy draft for tonight. We got 2 games on the schedule tonight. You and I are focused on the Vikings and the Eagles. And B-Marsh, I took a 1-0 lead in this competition. Isaiah Pacheco didn't do you any favors. 0.6 points last week in that Thursday night football game. Other than that, you would have had me, really, if he had just gotten a little bit better. I had 40.3. You had 31.8. So that being said, you're up first. Snake draft, same style as we did last time. Who you got tonight in the Eagles and the Vikings game with your number 1 pick?
My number 1 pick, man, traditionally you shouldn't pick a receiver number 1, but the way they feed Justin Jefferson and how he makes so many plays, I'm picking Justin Jefferson.
I love that pick. I think that he could be in for a really big night tonight. I have the Eagles winning this game. But I'm going to go Dalvin Cook, all right? They're going with the running backs. Did me well last week when I had Austin Eckler and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm going to go Dalvin Cook with pick number 2, and then I'm going to double down. I'm going to go Miles Sanders with pick number 2. Yeah. That's
Ah,
my strategy here in this snake draft. Going 2 and 3. Give me all these running backs. I'll let you load up on the wide receivers, and we'll see what happens. So Dalvin Cook and Miles Sanders now both off the board. Who you like with pick number 4?
see, and maybe that's why I continue to lose because you get all the running backs, and I don't have any running backs left. So maybe I need to switch up my strategy, but I cannot this week, so I got to go AJ Brown.
Yeah.
Oh man, and I got to double back down. So AJ, am I gonna have all receivers or what? Oh man, who is another Eagles running back? I'm not picking it back up. I'm going to Adam Thielen third.
Adam Thielen. Okay, that's where I was going to go if you didn't. So that's I like that pick. Okay, yeah. So you're going AJ Brown, Adam Thielen. I'm gonna go Devontae Smith.
Okay.
And then, I'm gonna go. What do I want to do here? Pick 7. This is kind of ugly. I'm gonna go Quez Watkins on the off chance that he gets a touchdown. So you got Alexander Madison, you got KJ Osborne on the board still. Yeah. You got Kenneth Gainwell. Where are you going with the final pick?
I need a running back. I gotta go Gainwell. Maybe he'll break a run, a long run or score a touchdown. I'm not sure. Maybe Miles Sanders will be tired and Kenneth Gainwell will go in and score a touchdown. So I'm gonna go Kenneth. Hopefully, he'll do me some justice.
I like that pick. I hope you're wrong, but I like that pick. And I think that makes sense.
All right, so let's run it down real quick. Dalvin Cook, Miles Sanders, Devontae Smith, and Quez Watkins rounding out Team Spencer, and then Team Marshall, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Kenneth Gainwell, and A.J. Brown. I do like the fact that you're spread out. 2 guys on each side. I'm a little more Eagles heavy tonight, but like I said, I think they get the win at home this evening. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. For my co-host, Brandon Marshall, I'm Michael Spencer. For our producer, editor extraordinaire, Kevin Harper, thanks so much for hanging out with us today here on CBS News Colorado. We will be back with you next week. B. Marsh, going to be in studio. We'll be good to have you back next to me, and hopefully we're talking about a Broncos victory on Sunday Night Football over the 49ers. Until then, stay safe. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week right here on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store.